Hello, this is Julia Davis of Yoga Teachers Forum London, and I'm here with Richard Kravetz, who will be running our morning on the 29th of September, all about teaching yoga for dementia. Hi, Richard.
Hello, Julia.
So the first question I want to ask you is, how did you come to practice and teach yoga?
Oh, that's a question that requires a bit of research. I go back a long way, Julia. I actually started going to yoga classes because of stress at work, which is quite a common one. I mean, I was training as a chartered accountant in the city. I worked for one of the big firms, and they're very competitive, and it's a very aggressive environment. And I suffered from stress accordingly. And it kind of, I used to take the work home in my head, Julia, and I found I couldn't sleep because I was worrying about things, I was fearful about things. And then someone suggested a yoga class to me way back in the day. And I went to my first yoga class and my mind was clear. And I realized I used to go straight from work to yoga. By the time I came out of the class, my whole mind was clear. And I'd let go of the day, and the rest is history, really.
Fantastic. And as far as yoga for dementia is concerned, how did you come to be interested in that aspect of teaching yoga?
Well, that's a really good question. I sometimes wonder myself, Julia, but it actually happened because I've been working, as you probably know, I've been working with special needs and disability for a number of years. And more recently, I've been working a lot with the elderly and elderly conditions around stroke, and dementia was one of those conditions in the care homes and the day centres where I've been working. But really what struck a chord with me was actually at a British Wheel of Yoga Congress. I think it was about 4 or 5 years ago. I think it was 2015, where there was, at the AGM, there was a guest speaker. And the topics around about what we as a yoga group, as a national governing body of yoga, can do for the community. And something inside me just stirred up, and I just stood up. Very unusual for me to stand up at these things impulsively. And I just said, look, we should be doing a lot more for the elderly. And I've been reading that there've been a lot of press around dementia, and dementia struck a chord with me, because I realized, you know, although I didn't really know anyone directly, I knew through association, and I realized how not only people with dementia but the carers and the families have a really hard time. And I thought, you know, really under the umbrella of karma yoga, that yoga is an ideal body to help with these situations. So I stood up and got quite a lot of support, and out of that we formed a focus group to get the British Wheel of Yoga more involved with dementia, and they became a dementia-friendly organisation. And I started to enrol loads of yoga teachers as dementia friends, which is something I'm aiming to do at the workshop for Finchley Yoga. So,
what does it mean to be a dementia friend?
So to be a dementia friend, it really just is, the prerequisite is just to attend an information session which lasts 1 hour, and it's delivered by a dementia friend champion, which I am one. I've been on the training to do it, and it just to make people more aware of what dementia is, and if they came across, whether in a family or environment or just out in the street, they came across someone they believe may have had dementia and may needed some help, they may be more aware of what to do. So it's really just in heightening awareness and making us more compassionate towards a dreadful condition.
So as far as helping people who have dementia is concerned, would the work that you do help someone, for instance, you've got a client, maybe you've been teaching them one-to-one, and then they start showing symptoms which you think may be associated with dementia. Is that something that we can kind of look out for the signs for, or is that not something that you would do in this situation?
Well, the whole thing around dementia, Judy, is first of all, the diagnosis of dementia is not easy. It's you know, some people, you know, memory loss is one of the common symptoms of dementia, but as a result of aging, a lot of people start to lose their memory. I'm sure you've left your keys somewhere. Sometimes I go into a room and wonder, why did I go in there in the first place? And then you suddenly think, oh, and I've done this a few times. And sometimes people think, am I getting dementia? Often the case is no, but unfortunately, as a result of aging, our memory can get reduced. The brain cells tend to diminish. That's not necessarily dementia, but it could be. So, I mean, the main symptoms around dementia, apart from memory loss, are maybe mood swings, reduced communication, social interaction. There's a number of factors that may instigate some concern, either by the person themselves or a family member who may recognise these things, and it may result in a visit to a GP, and they will do a number of diagnostic tests and may refer to a specialist. Once dementia is diagnosed, if it's appropriate, if you can diagnose it early enough, then whilst there's no recognised cure for dementia, despite all the science and everything, and they're still looking for a cure, there are a number of lifestyle changes that if you do them early enough, it can help alleviate the symptoms and make the quality of these people's lives better, or certainly more stable.
On that point, many of us, I think, may have watched the Dementia Choir and seen the massively positive effect that singing can have on people who are experiencing dementia. Are there yoga practices that, I know we won't have put our little things on people's heads to measure them or anything, but are there yoga practices that are easy to share that can have similarly positive effects on people?
I believe the answer is yes to that, Julia. Yes, the yoga for the brain, the singing has shown to give positive reinforcement to people. It makes them feel better about themselves. People like singing. People with dementia, they remember the songs from the 50s and the 60s. As there was in this 2-part documentary on the BBC, that came out of it. The idea, and one of the things, music for the brain is one of them. Another one is around exercise and diet, and exercise, getting people moving. And a lot of people with dementia, Julia, are physically mobile.
Yeah.
They may just have the ailments of an older person that any 70 or 80-year-old would have, for example, but a lot of them are physically mobile. Yeah. They can probably do some standing exercises, although the chairs are much more supportive and easy to do lots of things in the chairs. It's just that their processing through the condition is a little slower. So using just well-known yoga techniques, I've found over the years that I've been teaching people with dementia, do work. And they make people feel better about themselves, and they come out with a more positive disposition. I'm not saying yoga will cure the condition, as I said before, because there is no cure.
Yeah.
But if you can make people feel better about themselves and make them more confident and improve their self-esteem, they'll have a better quality of life. And I'm not saying that I've got hundreds of research papers on that. That's really just what I've observed over the years.
That's great.
Yeah.
Can I just ask around that? Because often there are people who are experiencing dementia, and there are people around those people who are experiencing dementia, maybe their partner or their children, or just people who care deeply about the person who's got that experience. Is there a way of, for example, having a family yoga session or a partner yoga session where both maybe the carer, the primary carer, who's the person who lives with that person, who loves them. I'm not talking about their carer, their nurse or anything like that, but the person who loves them, who's helping them, maybe they could do something together that helps both of them, because I could imagine it's quite stressful for the person who is living with the person who has dementia.
Yeah. No, absolutely, Julia. I mean, what often happens, if some people in the early stages of dementia that may be quite high functioning can be independent, they may go to a yoga session or go to a dementia day centre, and they can go independently. But in most of the cases, people don't have the degree of dependence, so they need a carer with them. The carer may be their spouse, it may be a family member, or it may be someone from the community, or it may be a volunteer. So when we run the dementia sessions in the day centres, there are many carers there, many carers. Most people will have one-to-one support, and we will do the yoga with the people with dementia, and the carers we involve with that. They'll either be helping the person they're with, or if that person has a reasonable degree of dependence, they'll be participating in the yoga themselves. And the second strand of that is yoga important for the carers themselves? Absolutely, yes, because carers need support and help. And a lot of the carers I've come across are overwhelmed, overstressed, because they're giving so much to the person that they're with that they're depleted in their own resources. And I go to take it even further, that if we had the opportunity, and I know these things go on, but it needs to be increased, is to have separate yoga sessions for just carers, without the people they're caring for, just for their own well-being and goodness. I think that is so important, and it's vital for the carers to be able to do the job that they can.
Yeah, so there's quite a lot in what you've just said, so I'm just going to unpack that. So it's very common that somebody who's experiencing dementia will have a carer with them when they come to a yoga class. So it is a great thing to do within that yoga class to have a practice that can be taken, that the person who is both the carer and the person who's experiencing dementia can take part in. And then on top of that, this may need to be an extra workshop that we come along to run, but to have something, to recognise the degree of support that's needed for the person who is doing the caring themselves, and that maybe or probably there are yoga practices that would be helpful for those people, and that might be slightly different. We only have half a day, so it sounds like we might have needed a full day, but we've got half a day, which is a decent amount of time to look at that. And so within the context of that time, we will definitely ensure that everybody leaves that session as a dementia friend. That's definitely something that will occur in that afternoon. And then we will be working around, would you say, supporting people with dementia in the context of them being with whoever they're going to be with at that session. Does that sound right?
Yes, I mean, in the 3 hours we've got in the workshop, that the first hour will be a structured dementia friends session. So at the end of that session, people that maybe knew a little about dementia but had a lot of questions, hopefully a lot of those questions will be answered. So they'll be much more dementia friendly, so that if they do have someone in their family, or they do wish to go down the field of using yoga with groups of people with dementia, and I unfortunately I have to say the number of people with dementia is only going to increase until they find a cure. There's a lot of work out there for people who want to go down this route. So the first hour will make them more aware of dementia. And then the other couple of hours is really sharing yoga techniques that I have found over the years have worked with these populations, whether it's on a one-to-one basis or a one-to-two basis, including the carer, or groups of people. The techniques and the tools and the ideas that I've found have been successful that get people involved and interacting. So I'll be sharing a lot of those. And I suppose the idea I always like to use on these trainings is that we've all got if we've got a bit of yoga background, we've got a few ideas, we've got a little small toolkit that we take along. I'd like to make that toolkit a really big toolkit, so people have loads of ideas, so that when they come to teach yoga for dementia, if that happens, that they can dip into different parts of the toolbox and adapt them to the people they're working with.
That's lovely. So one thing I'd just like to clarify with you, and it may well be that your answer to this question is this workshop is absolutely only for qualified yoga teachers. And if that is the answer, that's absolutely fine. But there may well be people who in their lives, just like you did when you started out going to yoga, they had stressful lives, they go to a yoga class and they absolutely love their yoga practice, and they find themselves with people in their lives who are experiencing dementia, and they might say, oh, I can see there's a yoga for dementia morning, I love yoga, would this be something that I could come along to even though I'm not a yoga teacher myself?
Yeah, I would say the answer to that is yes, because whilst a knowledge of yoga would be useful, the kind of techniques we're using are very simple and user-friendly, because when we're working with these populations, we're not going to get heavy into Sanskrit names and heavy technical stuff. It's going to be very basic, starting with anti-rheumatic exercises, easing out the joints. And then, although it's called yoga, Julia, a lot of it's not yoga. It's just using what works. And it might be singing. We might bring some singing and yoga movements and coordinating well-known songs with the movements. And, you know, we might even use nursery rhymes. And people might say, well, nursery rhymes are a bit patronizing for people in the 70s and 80s. Absolutely not, because it works and it gets people involved and it gets things triggering in their minds. I remember this nursery rhyme, introducing movement to something as basic as the hokey cokey or, you know, any of the rhymes we're used to. So although we're calling it yoga, a lot of them are just using user-friendly procedures that work well with this population. So it's not all yoga, it's just what works best.
Yeah, that sounds great. And what I love about what you've said to us today is that this is going to be a workshop that looks at things from your own personal experience. So you know, you have been into the day centres, you have worked with people with dementia, you were drawn to stand up in a group of people. That it's sort of like when people were talking about inclusion, that made you want to stand and say, this is what I feel about inclusion. Inclusion for me is inclusion of people with dementia. So this is clearly something that has come straight from your back to yoga, straight from your heart. And because of that, you've ensured that there was a focus group. Out of that, you've made sure there are yoga friends of dementia, and then you have taken it upon yourself to go into day centres and work with yoga with these groups so that you know what you're doing, you know, what you're talking about. And you know, we know as practitioners, we learn first by doing ourselves and second by sharing. So it's really lovely to hear that you're really practicing what you preach.
Yes, thank you. And I think there's a lot of opportunity out there because I need cover for a lot of the classes that I do. And often there's a fear about, well, I can't do this. I think anyone can do it. It's just having a little bit of confidence to go in front of these people. And I have to say, although there's a lot of fear and trepidation about the condition, the classes are fun. And you actually go out with a buzz yourself. You go out with a skip and a jump because you've changed people's dispositions. So it's a wonderful opportunity. I see it as a very positive opportunity.
Yeah. I actually saw that when I watched the Dementia Choir, and I think I saw one of the sessions where someone went into a room with a guitar, and then the way that the woman felt after he'd gone in with the guitar, and also their activity in the choir. So the idea, I mean, that's what we want to do as yoga teachers, isn't it? We want to have people step into our class and then however many minutes later, you know, go out with a skip and a jump, and then we feel that we've done what we came here to do. So
absolutely, yes, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. So just to remind everyone, the dementia-friendly yoga, so teaching dementia-friendly yoga, that will take place on Sunday. It's a Sunday this time, the 29th of September. It's 10 till 1. The venue will be at Finchley Yoga. We'll make sure that all the details are listed below, and it is very much part of the Yoga Teachers Forum workshop series that we'll be running. So do come and join us, and thank you so much for your time today and telling us a little bit more about what we might expect.
That's a pleasure. Thank you, Julia.
Thank you.